Thank you. Like I said, I do apologise for the delay with a few technical issues and bits and pieces to sort out. But back to our agenda, we're now going to item 9G, 3PL 2021-1329, which is an HOU application at Wotton. And I should have Liz Witcher, according to oh, there you are. Sorry, I do apologise. I can see who you are now. I haven't seen you for such a long time. Didn't realise you. Oh, I thought it was longer than that. Good. If you'd like to take a seat, that's fine. And I'll hand over to Matthew, please, for the presentation.
All right, so good morning, councillors. So this is a householder application, so 3PL 2021-1329 HOU, and this is for 12 Sharman Avenue in Wotton. It's for the retrospective permission for a rear garden summer house that has already been built, and this application has been brought to committee due to a call-in from the local ward member. So this is the location plan. So as you can see, the site here in red is 12 Sharman Avenue, and it's surrounded by all by other residential dwellings. And then this is the site context for 12 Sharman Avenue. So here's Sharman Avenue itself. This is the main high street for Wotton, and the summer garden house is in the rear garden. So it's located around here on the image. So this is the site plan for 12 Sharman Avenue. So as you can see, this was an extension that was approved under householder planning permission last year. And then this is the garden house that has already been pre-built, and this is what is now seeking retrospective planning permission. So here are the elevations for the garden house. So this is the front elevation. We've got the rear elevation here. We've got the two side elevations. And just to know, which you will see in the pictures, there is a sort of wraparound roof. So this will be clearer in the pictures. And this is a storage area. So you've got the main garden house here, and then you've got a storage area to the sides and to the rear. And as you can see, this is the floor plan. So you've got the summer room, a toilet, and then the storage block that wraps around. Okay, so there were concerns raised with the application by Wotton and Sarham-Tony flood group. So they had concerns because the site is located in an area of high flood surface water risk. And so they were seeking for there to be mitigations to alleviate any concerns with surface water drainage due to there has been history of flooding in Sharman Avenue and the surrounding area. So I can confirm that following the comments received, we did seek for proposed drainage strategy. And so what's going to happen is you've got connections here. There's then going to be an attenuation tank here. And then subject to conditions which have been imposed, including details of surface water drainage and bow water drainage, the purpose of the attenuation tank is that if there is heavier rainfall or surface water in the area, it will then hold any water that is generated from the garden house and hold it in this tank to help reduce any flood risk. And just to confirm, here are just some site pictures. So as you can see, this is the pre-existing summer garden house. And as I mentioned, with the storage area, there is a roof area that has been erected as well. The reasons why planning permission has been sought retrospectively is due to the height of the building. It falls outside the requirements for permitted development. And I also can confirm that within the last half an hour, I got comments from Wotton Town Council, and I can confirm that they support the comments of the flood group. So Wotton and Sarham-Tony's flood group, the comments that they have made in respect of this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Witcher, you've got 3 minutes, please. Could you switch your microphone on, please?
Green.
Oh, sorry.
There it is, green now. While this application is a small matter in the agenda of the Planning Committee, it is a large matter for the residents of Sharman Avenue and neighbouring streets who have been internally flooded on 3 occasions in the last 13 years. This includes number 7, which is opposite number 12, and number 10 next to number 12 was flooded in its garden. We're glad to hear that the Town Council has supported our comments. We knew they had, and glad that that's come through. We thank the Planning Officer for quoting extensively from our reports and for the conditions to be imposed and which will require discharge. However, our concerns still focus on what the existing surface water drainage system is, as there is no Anglian water surface water sewer in the street, and highways drains deal with surface water from the road, maybe from properties too, or does it all go into a soakaway? We missed the application for the extension to the bungalow, which was granted permission on the 17th of May 2021, and there is no information in the papers for that of what the surface water drainage consisted of. But from the age of the property, it is most likely to a soakaway, which may well no longer be fit for purpose. And if it is connected to the foul sewer, this is no longer acceptable to Anglian water. On the 24th of May 2021, so just 7 days after the approval, after only 25 millimetres of rain, the whole of Sharman Avenue was flooded, with one resident reporting internal flooding. So the problem is not restricted to storm conditions. As mentioned in our report, we are working with 2 dedicated officers from the LLFA and their consultants, WSP engineers, to see whether retrospective attenuation in the wider Sharman Avenue area would be a cost-effective way of mitigating flooding in that street and in neighbouring streets, both to the east and the west, as far as Seaham Road. Even if that is shown, the LLFA will need to find partners to fund any works, so it may be years before actual works commence. Turning to the conditions to be imposed, we are frankly astonished as ordinary citizens that the Planning Committee cannot make it a condition that building control inspect the works to see that they are carried out properly. Instead, we ask that the LLFA be given the drainage strategy when the applicant presents this to the planning officer, so that its impact on the flood risk in the street can be fully assessed alongside the extensive knowledge they have of the drainage in the area. Thank you.
Thank you. It's open to questions from members. Oh, hold on.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chairman. I hear exactly what the flood group are saying with regards to the conditions, and on reflection with the conditions need to be updated. This conditions 4 and 5 of your report to say something, and I hope you'll delegate the exact wording back to officers if you're in agreement, but something along the lines of a failure to provide an acceptable solution, foul and surface water solution, within 6 months of the date of the permission will result in the works being unacceptable and the council will consider its approach. That is not the wording. Apologies, Mike, but I hope members can get the gist of what I'm saying is that as it's a retrospective development, what we need to do is then control the works being done within a period of time to then ultimately invalidate those retrospective works and mean that they need a further planning application. So apologies for the exact wording, and I hope that if members understand what I've said, then they would delegate the exact wording, but those conditions 4 and 5 need to be time limited so that we ensure that the works can be done. And that was a reflection of what the Watton and St Anthony group have said. With regards to the condition with regards to building control inspection, as reflected in the report, we can't control measures, as you well know, under the building control regulations. We can only add conditions which are subsequent to the planning regulations. But if we did receive a drainage strategy for conditions 4 and 5, we would consult the lead local flood authority, given that they are within a high water flood risk area. However, we cannot guarantee that the lead local flood authority will respond on a development of this scale.
Thank you. It's open to questions. I've got Councillor Daigan, Councillor Bowes, and then Councillor Gilbert.
Thank you. I think the first thought I had when I read this was, when does a shed come a summer house? Because, you know, looking at the size, and as far as I can understand, the only reason why this needs planning permission is because of its height. If they actually lopped bit off, and so we, in that case, we wouldn't be able to do anything about the flooding at all, because I thought you can have about 50% of your garden and that isn't at all affected by flooding laws. So, you know, if they'd actually perhaps gone for permission previously and actually had a smaller, but perhaps they could have had a smaller in height, but a wider building to get they get their sewage in. So we might have even been in a worse position than we are now. It's just by a bit of luck on this one, it appears to me that we've got some control, because if it was a shorter building, it wouldn't. As I say, is there any sort of definition between what a shed and a summer house is anyway?
No. No, so they're all dealt with, all extensions, garden extensions, garages, sheds, summer houses, conservatories are all dealt with the same permitted in your general permitted development order, and they're all dealt with under the general heading of single story extensions or single story outbuildings. Yeah, so that's absolutely correct. So ultimately, if this was slightly lower, then it would be permitted development. It's not. They have made a formal application, and therefore, members, you are required to consider the flood risk element because it's a full application. However, as noted in the report, you are required also to take into account the other material consideration with, if it was lower, it could be bigger and could be PD. And that's why that's set out in the report.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bowes, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I called this item in and fully support what I'm saying, Flood Group, and Liz is saying, and their concerns. However, Rebecca has sort of reassured me a bit as regards the mitigation and attenuation measures and ensuring that they're put in place, and that that will be looked at, and that action will be taken if, because that was the question I was going to ask, how the council would make sure that the measures that are being promised are put in place. So I was pleased with your answer. Thanks.
Yes, so members, subject to you allowing me refining the wording, I definitely agree that the wording needs updating to ensure those works can be undertaken. Obviously, members, the enforcement of those conditions is not a material planning consideration for today. The council does have the ability to enforce where it's in the public interest and where it's appropriate to do so. But if they then become in breach of those conditions, the council does have the opportunity to take appropriate enforcement action.
Thank you, Councillor Gilbert.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I've got no objections to the summer house, but it is the flood issue all the time. And on page 105 of the assessment notes, however, confirmation for the connection for the attenuation tank is yet to be provided. So we have no idea they're going to do anything. On page 107, within 12 weeks of the date of approval, it should be agreed before permission. And now Rebecca just said about 6 months. I think, well, 6 months is much too much, and even 12 weeks, I think, without knowing what is going to be done. I'm wondering whether we should actually defer this until we have agreed an acceptable drainage strategy.
So I don't want to put words into Liz's mouth, so please, the chairman might give you the opportunity to let me stand corrected, but she's quite eloquently described what a complicated process it may end up being, being unable to do this. Also, there is difficulties with them. Members, if you defer the application waiting for the information, we're not going to get it, because Anglian Water won't consider a connection until they've got a planning permission in place. So that's the issue that the applicants have got. So they're saying Anglian Waters, and I do forget off the top of my head their section agreement, but the connection section agreement only commences once they've got planning consent. So what they're saying to us is it's very difficult at this time to be able to establish that connection point and how it's going to work, because Anglian Water won't engage with them until they've got a planning permission, which makes it very difficult, members, for you. I appreciate you're concerned about the timescales, but again, I would go back to that it is quite a complex process. I think, you know, we think, sorry, apologies, 12 weeks is a reasonable time period. And I'm suggesting to you that 6 months in terms of then implementing that gives them a reasonable time period. In my view, a very tight time period, actually. But by setting it at 6 months, they could then agree to extend it once they've got to acceptable agreement with Anglian Water. But that is my suggestion to you, members. We are, you know, I'll always say it's completely within your remit to say you would like that information in 6 weeks and in 4 months. But if we then end up in having to chase them on enforcement grounds, does that get us any further forward, given it's already retrospective development? So it is just a suggestion, members, and I'm happy to take an alternative suggestion on timescales.
Yeah, if it's the case of they can't, Anglian Water won't agree to the connections until there's a planning planning permission in place, I accept that. I think that's really like putting the cart before the horse, isn't it? I mean, we should have these details before we grant permission, because another one coming up in the Deer's Leap, it's the same thing. Somewhere along the line, that's got to change, especially in these times where there's more and more incidents of flooding, more places are being flooded. And then to say, yes, you can have permission to build this. And, oh, yeah, by the way, we'll try and sort out any drainage issues later. That is totally the wrong way around. But taking on board what Rebecca said, I think we, you know.
Thank you. Any other questions on this item? Okay, thank you. So with regards to item 9G at Watton, 3PL 2021-1329, which is an HOU application, could I have show of hands for approval as per your officer's recommendation? And subject to delegated authority, I've been informed. So is that unanimous? Yes. Yes, unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Good to see you again. We're now going to move to item 9H at Thetford, 3PL 2021-1712F. Over to you, please, Rebecca.
No,
Oh, Matthew's going to do that. Okay. We only call him Rebecca at weekends. Good. Be with you in a second.
All right, so good morning, councillors. Again, it's nearly afternoon. So this is a planning application for Thetford Town Football Club on Mumford Road. The application reference is 3PL 2021-1712/F, and it's for the erection of a 2-meter perimeter fence with an anti-climb gate and entrance for the playing fields for Thetford Town Football Club. The reasons for this application being brought to committee is due to Breckland Council is the landowner and they lease the land to Thetford Town Football Club. Okay, so here we've got a location plan. So this is the existing sports field for the football club. So there's pitches here. So the blue line, of course, represents land ownership. And the red line is going to represent where the fence is going to be erected for the site. And you can also see here is a sports centre, and they also share with the cricket club as well for Thetford. So just again, giving some site context. So here is the football club along with the cricket club, and this is where the football pitches are. The fence is roughly going to be erected where I'm just showing you right now. There's also an entrance to the sports field here, and there is a route to cut through down the side of the pitch here. And as you can see, you've got the train station here, and you've also got an industrial site behind, and you've also got residential dwellings around. So here is the proposed site plan marking up where the fence and the gates are going to go. So the fence is going to run along this parameter here and here. There's going to be a 1.2 meter high gate here, and there's also going to be a 3 meter gate here. The reasons why they want to erect a fence is due to this current issues with the maintenance of the pitches. So people use this as a informal cut through, and they also use it for dog walking. And due to poor maintenance from the informal cut through, it means that the football club want to erect the fence and the gating to allow for better maintenance of the pitch. But just to confirm that there is a route that can still act as an informal cut through down the side of the pitch here. And the football club has also confirmed the sports centre will not be closing a gate, which allows access to this field here. It's just they want to erect the fencing for better maintenance of the pitches. So here is the elevation for the proposed 3-metre high gate. This is the proposed elevation for the 1.2 metre gate. And here is the elevations for what the fencing will look like. And this, of course, will wrap around the entire site. So here are just a couple of site pictures. So as you can see, these are informal pitches and training areas for the football club. This is looking, so you've got the entrance to the field down here. And this is currently used as an informal cut through. Just to confirm that Norfolk County Council Public Rights of Way were consulted due to concerns were raised locally about the closing of this cut through that's currently used with the fencing. I can confirm that this is not a public right of way, and this is technically an informal space, and so therefore concerns with public rights of way, they have raised no objections, and the football club will be allowed to erect fencing, and this is supported by Wreckland Council. And then this is just again looking up as well. So the application is recommended for approval subject to conditions. Thank you.
It's open to questions from members. Councillor Kybird.
I note the request from town council that the fencing should be green, which one I would agree with. Is that what is proposed? I mean, that particular type of fencing is normally has a green finish, but it can be sort of naturally galvanized.
If you've got concerns with the proposed finishing of the fencing, we're more than happy to add a condition that can be delegated to officers to request for the colour to be confirmed in preference, if you prefer it to be green, in the condition. Yeah, if that's something that you've got a concern of, you are welcome to add that to the materials condition to be confirmed that the colour will be green.
Okay, any further questions, please? No, thank you. So on this item, 3PL 2021-1712 at Thetford, including the additional request that the colour be green. Your officer's recommendation for this is one of approval. Could I have a show of hands, please? And that should be unanimous. Okay, that's terrific. Thank you. We move on to item 11.9I. At Hilborough, 3PL 2022-0072/F. Councillor Harry Sands of the Parish Council and Councillor Fabian Eagle, who's the ward rep. If you'd like to come and sit on the right-hand side, please.
Chairman, sorry, I need to declare a personal prejudicial interest as I have interest in land adjacent to the site. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Must be terrible when you own so much of the county of Norfolk. Okay. Hand over to you then, please, Naomi.
Thank you, Chairman. So this application is in Hilborough and Ickborough. It's the Stamford training area. The application is for a 40-ton bridge located across the River Wissey, along with an improved track route, fencing, gates, cattle grids and signage either side of the bridge. The application site is located at Hollowheath Military Crossing Point on the B1108 Watton Road and extends north where the bridge is proposed and south. It is located within a military training area known as Stamford Training Area. Stanter, south of the village of Hillborough and approximately 30 miles north of the market town of Thetford. It's within a rural setting and the route passes through wooded areas, heathland and over the River Wissey, as you can see from the location plan there. This is the site and the wider context. And this is the layout plan showing the main location of the works proposed. And this is the insert A showing a close-up of some of the works proposed, which includes the construction of new stone tracks, placement of a new Durbar steel bridge crossing over the River Wissey, which I'll show you in a moment. A bridge to have maximum capacity of 40 tonnes, installation, alteration of cattle grids, concrete apron, access gates, timber post and rail fencing with stop-proof mesh and signage. And there you go, insert B there, which further shows improvements to cattle grids. And insert C, which shows the proposed bridge. And further works to cattle grids on insert D. So the elevation and floor plan of the bridge proposed over the River Wissey. And a 3D image of what it will look like. And site photos, this is looking southwest along point A. Looking northeast towards point B. Looking southeast towards point C and D. And then back to the location plan. In terms of comments received, we have received concerns from Hillborough Parish Council. They've raised concerns in terms of ecology, trees, flood risk and raves. We've also received comments from Councillor Fabian Eagle, who has raised off-site flooding concerns. In terms of the assessment of the application, there aren't actually any adopted policies relating to Stanter or military development. And so the principle was assessed in accordance with the MPPF, which advises that where there are no relevant development plan policies, permission should be granted unless the application of policies in the MPPF that protect areas or assets of particular importance provides a clear reason for refusing the development proposed, or any adverse impacts of doing so would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits when assessed against the policies in the MPPF taken as a whole. The local planning authority has advised that the development is required to improve vehicle access to Stanter Northwest Extension. This will be achieved via an additional 40-ton bridge located across the River Wissey and will minimise military traffic on the public highways. The need for this is derived from additional military units being relocated to the east of the UK and a subsequent increase in demand for access to training land. Given the nature of the application to improve vehicle access to Stanter Northwest Extension, it is accepted that the development would have economic and national security benefits. The principle of the development is therefore considered acceptable, subject to complying with all other relevant policies within the Breckland local plan. In terms of the impact on the character and appearance of the area, whilst the proposals would introduce more prominent structures within the rural area and the open countryside, they would not be substantial in height and scale to lead to an adverse impact on the character and appearance of the area. It is considered that the proposals would not give rise to any significant harm to the character and appearance of the landscape and surrounding area. And in terms of amenity impact, there are no dwellings in the vicinity of the application site, and therefore the proposed works would not lead to an unacceptable impact on amenity. So in terms of character and appearance, the development is considered acceptable and compliant with policy. In terms of highway safety, the local authority have raised no objection to the proposal subject to conditions, so it is considered compliant with highways policies. Trees, the applicant has submitted a arboricultural impact assessment, a tree retention and removal plan, and a tree constraints plan. Concerns were raised in respect of trees by the parish council. However, the tree and countryside officer has raised no objection to the proposed works on tree grounds. In terms of ecology, the site is located within a triple SI, a special protection area and a stone curlew buffer zone. The applicant has submitted an ecological impact assessment and a habitat regulations assessment. Natural England raised no objection to the proposed works subject to condition. We are still awaiting comments from the council's ecologist, and subject to them raising no objection, then the application will be considered compliant with policies EMVO2 and EMVO3. In terms of nutrient neutrality, the site does not involve the creation of any additional overnight accommodation. And given the nature of the application, its location outside the catchment area, it is considered that it will not lead to a significant effect on the conservation objectives associated with nutrient neutrality. Flood risk, which has been another concern raised by the parish council and the local ward rep. In terms of flood risk, whilst the majority of the works proposed would be located in flood zone 1, therefore at low risk of surface water flooding, there is provision of the bridge across the River Wissey, which would be located in flood zone 3, which is considered to have a high probability of flooding, and therefore a flood risk assessment was submitted by the applicant for further consideration. The flood risk assessment states that in order to address the potential flood risks identified and ensure that the risk of flooding is not increased within the catchment, a number of mitigation measures are recommended. They are included within the officer report. The mitigation measures recommended are intended to ensure that the proposed scheme poses no demonstrable adverse effect on floodplain storage, overflow routes, or risk of flooding within the catchment. In addition, use of the route will likely be restricted during periods of flooding, thereby ensuring the safety of any site users. Given the bridge is proposed to be located over a main river and therefore the flooding issues are fluvial, the Environment Agency has been consulted on the application and advised that the provided modelling is appropriate for the application. They therefore didn't raise any objections to the proposal subject to condition. They also advise that irrespective of planning approval under the terms of the environmental permitting regulations, a permit may be required from them for any proposed works or structures within the floodplain in, under, over or within 8 metres from the top of the bank of the River Wissey, which is designated as a main river. In light of the Environment Agency's no objection on flood risk grounds, the proposal is considered to be compliant with policy EMV09, subject to compliance, subject to condition, and that is compliance with the approved details, which includes the mitigation measures outlined in the flood risk assessment. And there's also been no objections from the contaminated land officer, subject to condition. And in terms of heritage considerations, Historic England advised that they were consulted on pre-application proposals for the proposed works and therefore provided advice on a route that would avoid the undesignated historic earthwork features in the area. And on that basis, they raised no objection. And in light of the above, the application is recommended for approval. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Naomi. Councillor Eagle, would you like to go first or last? First, if you wish, yes, by all means. 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I have, on behalf of myself and the residents of the local area, 2 concerns about this application that I hope the committee will be able to address. The first is the question about the increased chance of flooding upstream and what I believe to be a failure by defensive states of their riparian duties. The bridge and its raised roadways are being constructed across a well-known floodplain and just after where Blackbrook, or some people know as Wattenbrook, joins the River Wissey. The river during most winters and times of heavy rainfall has already burst its banks at this point, and in my adult life, I have even known it to flood over the B1108, which is a short distance downstream. I acknowledge that the applicant has raised the height of the bridge to allow increased water flow, but when the raised roadways to the bridge are effectively dams, it's a wasted effort. In normal winters, this area is permanently flooded, and it gives the appearance of being a large lake from the A1065. These roadways, I fear, will have an impact further upstream, and there's a grade 2 listed water mill immediately upstream, as well as even what a 5-second delay on water flow will impact on the local villages and perhaps Watton, who have all suffered flooding issues. Hillborough required fire brigade assistance in 2020 because the river was so high that the highway drains could not flow into the river. I am hoping that the committee will insist on several culvert pipes to be incorporated into the raised roadways to alleviate this. The Environment Agency, I note, are satisfied with the works, but I feel their approval is based on average data and perhaps an inspection by them during the summer for this, and I hope that for this application, local knowledge should be considered as relevant. And although it was a long time ago, and it's perhaps not one of the world's greatest scientific reports, I did do my geography coursework and work study on that stretch of river. My other concern, which when I first saw the plans for this bridge, was I thought it was a commercial venture between Defence Estates and Raves R Us to increase access to the area. The training area has recently constructed substantial security gates as entrances along the B1108, including the one to connect to this application. Yet the bridge from the minor road will have 2 14-foot field gates and a cattle grid. The training area near where the bridge is proposed has been used on frequent occasions by raves due to the number of old airfield and agricultural buildings in this area. And this bridge will only make access easier and cause further distress to the surrounding villages and expense to the local purse, with the extra policing from other areas and residents expecting our environmental health team to be involved. At one recent rave, cars were abandoned along the A1065 in Hillborough Village, and there was people walking through residents' gardens and stumbling along the A1065 and other roads. Where the proposed road access is, the fields near this area are mostly left fallow for wildlife, but would make an unauthorised car park before walking over the bridge. I would like to see more work to make this area inaccessible to unauthorised use and secure. It does seem ironic that an area that was created to help defend our homes and has probably helped Ukrainians defend theirs, but these works could allow homes to be invaded by water and disrupted by illegal activities. And perhaps, if I couldn't explain, the committee would do a site visit. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, it's Councillor Henry Sands of the Parish Council. Are you the chairman or?
No, I'm not the chairman.
Nope. Okay, that's fine. If you'd like to, you've got 3 minutes as well, sir.
I share Councillor Eagle's great concerns over the time of year these assessments have taken place. Someone who lives close by to the vicinity, the flooding that takes place is pretty much permanent from November through till March at sometimes. And that water has been known to come over the bridge at Bodney on the 1108. I would be very concerned over anything in and around that bridge becoming downstream and that effectively becoming a dam, as Councillor Eagle says. The other question I raised, and we heard the benefits to access for vehicles and increased access of the site. There is already a very large access point, only 100 yards up the road on Smugglers Lane. So what great extra benefit is going to be derived from a new entrance gate merely 100 yards further down the road, which takes people over a bridge around a side that is a site of scientific interest and well known for its stone curlew breeding populations at certain times of year. I don't believe that is a justifiable benefit, nor do I see that firsthand. Again, to echo the points about the raves, in the last 5 years, I think we've probably been vulnerable to the best part of 10 raves. And once these start, they can go on for 48 hours. And the nuisance to the village and to the local road is significant. That river, as it is, has played quite a good buffer in preventing illegal activity getting over there. I think building a bridge is just going to make it far, far easier. And with the best will in the world, doesn't matter how big the gate is or so, people will cross the bridge very, very easily. I just don't believe the benefits for this project outweigh the environmental and social costs it's going to bring.
Thank you. It's open to questions from members. Any questions at all? Councillor Wilkinson, then Councillor Crane.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to know if you've had any, Naomi, any reports or anything from the Ministry of Defence, because I assume they own the land. I just wondered why it's not secured already when people are getting through to raise. I just wondered, you know, the impact. I just don't understand why the MOD hasn't really.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Are the raves that have they taken place near this site or in different location?
If you could bring the map up, there's some Romney huts within a short walking distance of that area, or the aerial photographs. And then there's what was the old hospital, basically the Bodney airfield.
Yeah. Okay. So sorry,
I think the level of fencing required also to do that would be so substantial, given it's, you know, such a vast area. It's kind of impossible.
Okay.
There and there are the main. No, yeah. Sorry. Yeah, there along that road, there's some buildings there, and there's buildings there.
Right. Okay. And your nature of your question was MOD. Could you just turn your microphone off, please?
Yeah, I just can't. It's obviously a training area which should be secure anyway, and those buildings are probably used for if they're deserted for training, aren't they? I would imagine. I can't understand why there's MOD haven't said how they can secure the area with this extra access in to a military training area. I know that might not be relevant to the application, but I think it's what they're saying. If it's going to make it easier to access the public, illegally accessing their land, I thought
Yeah.
they'd have been
Okay, thank you.
done something with this.
Rebecca?
Yeah, I'm going to say what you think I'm going to say. You've got to determine the application in front of you, not the application you want it to be. I think if members felt that they could suitably add a condition that would help with the situation, i.e. some boundary treatment, and you've heard both sides of how appropriate people think that would be, then obviously we would take a recommendation if the application was acceptable on that basis. But yeah, you must consider the application in front of you. And with particular regard to the raves, I completely understand the concern of increasing the access. However, you know, they are not applying to facilitate that. The raves are obviously illegal in themselves and are therefore managed by other means, albeit they're not being managed very well. But in terms of the contents of this application, you know, that's not what the application is for, to propose to facilitate them. That is an illegal activity, and you shouldn't really be taking that into consideration in the determination of this application.
Thank you. Councillor Crane, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, mine was really regarding the trees, because I'm aware that there are some mature trees there, but I think that's been covered by the tree officer. I'm just checking there are none being cut down.
Sorry, I'm not sure off the top of my head which trees are proposed to be cut down in terms of the works to the access, but the Tree and Countryside officer was consulted on the application and had in his comments were following view of the various assessments that have been submitted in support of the tree works, and he raised no objection to them.
Okay. Councillor Gilbert, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to ask some questions about the roadways. We know the area floods because it's meant to flood. It is a floodplain, and that's what floodplains do. We're also hearing that if these roadways are raised, they become a dam. You know, maybe not a very high dam, but even a few inches of water held up can cause awful problems downstream. I thought I read somewhere in the notes that the roadways were now going to be at the existing ground level, so which I think hopefully would alleviate that problem. So can I have some clarification, please, as to whether the roadways are going to be at the existing ground level or raised? Because one way or the other would determine how I might vote on this.
Okay, just find that out for you. Thank you.
So there's a couple of matters there. So the flood risk assessment, the mitigation measures require that the road is at ground level, but obviously then it needs to raise up into a bridge, which I think is Councillor Eagle's point that yes, although the roads are at ground level and they're a permeable material, what he's concerned about is when they hit the point of when it raises, then the water's hitting that and bouncing back on itself. I hope that's a clear reflection of what you're saying. I just want to be really clear on the point you said we're hearing. You're obviously hearing that from the parish council and Councillor Eagle in that regard, but you're not hearing that from your statutory consultee. So your statutory consultee is saying that the flood mitigation measures proposed would mitigate the impact of increasing flood risk in this area. But I do appreciate there's an existing issue with flood risk that this won't solve, but in purely policy terms, you need to consider, will this development increase flood risk in this area to a detrimental level?
Do you know when the assessment will be made? Sorry, I shouldn't normally accept that from the floor, but it's a very good question. I'll just find that out for you. Councillor Kybird, please.
Are there gates proposed either end of the bridge, and could they be assisted by anti-climb devices?
I didn't see gates on the bridge on the plan that was shown. I wouldn't thought there'd be gates on the bridge itself, but there's gates at the road end, but not on the bridge itself.
Could I ask Councillor Eagle to clarify?
Yes, he nodded to say that I was right. I'm wondering if we should condition that there be machine gun posts on there. Might be a way to stop the rave, but that's at your discretion, members.
Now, as I alluded in my what I said is they are standard field gates of about 14 foot in width at the junction, which compares to their 6 foot high heavy duty secure gates just at the other end of the road.
Okay, thank you. We'll find Councillor Gilbert.
I just come back on what we were saying about the flood risk. I'm not so much concerned about the flood risk in this area because it is a floodplain. It is the fact that if we don't get it right here, the flooding is going to happen upstream.
Okay, do we have any?
Yeah. So, I think what you were getting at, and then that kind of led me astray. So the flood risk document is dated February 2020. Sorry, where was that date again? 2021, that would be right, wouldn't it? February 2021. I think what you were getting at is when did they make the site visit, but a flood risk assessment isn't done on a certain day like a traffic count. You don't go out and count see what the water is on that day and then you move on to a different date. What you do is you collaborate all the information about the incidents of flooding, the reported flooding, the surface water flood risk maps, your EA flood risk maps, and then you make an assessment and then you add on 20% for climate change. And then you use the rainfall over the period of year. That's what a regular flood risk assessment is dealt with. You know, I'm not pretending to be an expert on flood risk assessments. So what we won't find is a date. So they didn't go out on a certain date and say, oh, there's no water here, so we're all right for tomorrow. I think that's important. And that is evident from the flood risk assessment that they've looked at all those matters and a sequential test. And this will be what the Environment Agency have based their comments on in this regard. Does that help?
Yes, fine. Thank you. Any further questions from members? Councillor Wilkinson.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. Can we put conditions in that there is a proper, decent, secure gate, as Councillor Eagle indicated is further along? And is it possible to have a flow pipe under the raised part of the road? So if water didn't come up to it, it could go through a pipe, so it still run around on the floodplain, if you like. Could we do that?
If members are concerned that the resultant of this will lead to better accessibility to the site, then we certainly can suggest a boundary treatment, but we will need to go away and speak to them about that because it'd be outside the red line boundary. I'm assuming that's what members want. They don't want a gate running all the way along the access road and over. I'm assuming, please do tell me I'm wrong. I think the issue is you can gate this access point, but then there are other access points to the site. But you certainly can, if you're concerned about access, have a gates condition at the entrance points at either end of the access track, I would suggest. But we couldn't then extend it to the entire, because I think you were concerned about, is it a training ground, is it secured? So I would just want to be really clear that yes, you could ask for gates, but they would only be at the point of access to the site. And we would need to go away and discuss that with the applicant and also make sure that they're set back in accordance with the Highways Authority standards, which is usually 5 meters, but they might require more. With regards to the pipe, that's not a mitigation measure in the flood risk assessment. So I would say that that's over and above our remit, and what is the planning justification for that?
Thank you. No microphone on. Thank you. Any further questions from members at all? No. Okay. Thank you for this item then at Hilborough 9I, which is 3PL 2022-0072/F, full application. Your officer's recommendation is one of approval. Without the gates, because that was not part of this application. Okay. Without the gates, because that's not part of this application, I'm not going to accept that, even as an amendment to the application. Your officer's recommendation is one of approval. Could I have a show of hands, please? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Those against? 2, 6, 2. This item is approved. Okay, thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, we're moving on. Item 10 is applications determined by the Executive Director of Place, which are there for your information. And item 11 is, for your information, also is the appeals decisions for May. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is that.